Alright, in this video tutorial we're going to be covering the featured slider here in the middle, and it shouldn't be too much trouble, so let's jump right into it. Now back here in our HTML, we've created this slider div already, which is going to house the slider, and inside of our slider we need to save out, or insert in rather, the image. So back here in our Finder for our document here, we have our site root, we have our images, and you'll remember that we saved out this image called featured_image.jpg, which is going to fit right in that area. So we're going to load in this image into that section. So let's just do an image tag here, image source equals, and the path here is going to be images slash, featured_slider.jpg, alt equals featured slider. Remember, the alt is required for image tags. This is just a phrase that describes the image, used for accessibility in search engines. So let's go ahead and save this and make sure that image is loading. Let's jump back to our browser and refresh. And I have a broken image link, so I must have misspelled something. This is, it's featured_image. So I'll fix that, featured_image. And save and refresh. Okay, so there's that image. And if we go back here and look at our Photoshop mockup, let's turn back on all these layers here, minus the color scheme. You can see that this featured slider is just, or the featured image is nice and centered. So there's this even margin all the way around this image. And right now ours, of course, is over here weighted to the left edge. So we need to add that same margin so that it fits just perfectly around there. So we'll jump back to our CSS file and fix that code. In order to get that nice white border that we had right here all the way around there, so everything is kind of centered up, you can see that white edge, we can simply add a border to our main div. So you can see that if we go back here and look at the HTML, we have this div ID equals main, which surrounds kind of everything. So if I just add a border on this div, that will fix that issue. So let's go back to our style sheet. We'll come down here to our main rule right here, and we're going to add a border. So let's come up in here and we'll just say border. And this border, let's just set to, actually we probably need to measure this from Photoshop to get it exactly right. Let's just guess and say 5 pixels solid FFF, which is white. So let's save that and come back here and refresh. And you can see that adds that 5 pixel border all the way around there. So that's looking pretty good. I think that border is actually a little bit bigger than that, so I believe it's probably 10 pixels from Photoshop. If we come in here and measure, we can get that measurement there. Yep, it's exactly 10 pixels. So let's jump back here and set that to 10 and save and come and refresh. Okay, so that gives us a 10 pixel border. Now what we need to remember here is the box model. Because I've added a 10 pixel border on the left and a 10 pixel border on the right, the width of this element is no longer 1040 pixels. It's 10 plus 10 plus 1040. So actually right now I'm sitting at 1060. So I need to back off 20 pixels from the width of this element. So I'm going to set this to 1020 to account for the 20 pixels of border on the left and right. So now let's save, come back and refresh. And now that tucks back in to the correct size there. And that's looking pretty good. Let's go ahead and start to flesh out this shadow area down here below the featured slider. So you can see on our featured slider, remember we built this shadow back here, and we want to include that as well. So in order to get this right, we actually need to measure the height of our featured slider here. So let's grab this and just quickly measure down here to get a quick estimate. The height here looks like it's 448 pixels. So that's the slider plus the shadow area. I'm just kind of eyeballing it over against this edge. So we're going to come back here and let's create a new CSS rule for the slider div. Remember, we already have this div. This is the div right here. So this is the slider area where that image is inside of. And we'll start to create this. So we're going to say height is 448 pixels. And let's save that and come back and refresh just to make sure that's working. So that includes that little extra piece down there. Then we're going to tuck our shadow in right there. So we need to get rid of this orange color. The background color on that main div we no longer need. So let's just get rid of that. So you can see that's shining through there. And we need to now set this slider to have a background image as well. So say background dash image URL. And I can't remember the name of this, so let's jump back here and see. We called that thing featured underscore shadow. So that's this guy right here. Okay, so that's a JPEG. So I'll say images slash featured shadow.jpg. And we don't want this thing to repeat, so we're going to say background repeat, no repeat. All of these background properties also have a CSS shorthand. I can put them all in a single background declaration as well, just to have them all on one line like we've looked at other properties. But you can research that one on your own. I'm just going to leave them separate for now. So let's come back here and refresh. And I can't see the background image because by default it aligns it to the top left. So it's underneath my current image. So we need to set the position. So say background dash position. And we're going to set this one to bottom middle. So it should align it down here into the middle. So let's refresh that. And I still don't see it. So what I'm going to do is delete this image right here. So I'm just going to delete this little bit. Whoops. Delete this entire line. I'll just cut that because I'm going to paste it back in a second. Save and refresh. Okay, my shadow is in fact there. It's just not down at the bottom of this div like it's supposed to be. So something must be goofy with my background positioning of this element. So let's scroll back down here. And when troubleshooting areas like this, what I like to do is just add a temporary border. So I can say outline 1 pixel solid blue. And if I save that and refresh, it just adds this simple blue border so I can see exactly what's happening or where this is supposed to go. And I think the issue here is actually I've reversed these two. So I want this one to be left, and I want the second value to be bottom. So it's going to be on the left edge and the bottom. So I just messed those keywords up. So let's save and refresh. And that in fact does fix it. Now it sticks right down there at the bottom like it's supposed to be. And now I can go ahead and turn off this, just delete that blue border there and refresh. So that looks pretty good there. And then I can insert back in that image. So we'll come back in here, and that image that I cut earlier, let's paste that back in and save and refresh. And now that's lining up how it's supposed to. So you can see, in fact, that does have that nice shadow tucked right down underneath there. And I can adjust the height or position that shadow up and down exactly how I want it. If I don't want to use these keywords, which I've used, remember from our positioning, you can use pixel values here as well. So that's the slider. And the last thing we're going to fix on this is I can actually see, it's a little subtle, but I'm going to zoom in here on the right edge here of the screen. Actually, this might throw it off, but this image is a little bit too wide. So it's maybe a little tough to see, but you can see this left border is a little bit bigger than the white border. And that's because this featured image is too wide. So I'm going to come back here and check out the width on this. And it looks like the width is 1022, which is incorrect. It should be exactly 1020 pixels. So back to Photoshop, I need to modify this image. So when I save this featured slider out, or this featured image, in fact, I'll just do this really quick. So it should be 1020 by 420. So I'll just get my marquee. I'll come up in here to fixed size, and I'll set the width to 1020 and the height equal to, was that 420? 420. And then when I click in here, it's going to make a marquee of exactly that size, and then I can come in and select just that much. So I'll zoom in here. The issue is I scaled this up so you can actually see the problem. This very right pixel here is kind of all the way up and down. It's a little bit faded. So when I scaled that image or moved it around on my mask, I didn't have it quite pixel perfect. So let's just make sure that that includes everything here so you can see the same issue. I need to take this marquee and bring it over one tick so that that outside faded mark is not included. And that looks pretty good. So I'm just going to quickly save this guy out again. So I'm just going to do the same thing. Command-Shift-C to copy merged. Create a new document. Command-N. Hit OK. And Command-V to paste. And then I'll say File, Save for Web. So I'm not using slices here again. We'll leave this guy at 70 and hit Save. And I'm just going to click on the featured shadow here. And click Save. And it's going to override it. It'll ask me if I want to replace it. So I'll hit Yes. Come back here and refresh. And now that you can see that that second image there is in fact a little bit smaller right behind there. So now I just need to come back here to my CSS and make sure everything's tidy. Our slider, we have our image, and that looks pretty good. So in our next video tutorial, we'll be covering the content sections of this featured slider. Don't make the mistake I did. I just noticed I actually overrode, I suppose, the wrong image. So I saved my new image as the shadow instead of the actual featured slider. So when I was in Photoshop, I said File, Save for Web. I hit Save here, and I clicked on the wrong one. I was supposed to overwrite the featured image, but instead I clicked on featured shadow. So I need to save and overwrite that one and refresh. And I've actually got to go back and resave out my shadow because I just deleted it. So don't make that same mistake. Make sure you overwrite the correct one, and I'll see you in the next tutorial.